Good evening, and thank you. Welcome to Lord of Life Lutheran Church. My name is Kirsten Sowie Hoffman. I serve as pastor for this congregation. We are so delighted that you're here. As the front of your program says, the mission is possible because you are here. Thank you for joining us. Some of you that were here last night are going to hear a very similar intro to what I did last night, and for the next couple nights, so you'll just have to breathe. I want to make sure that everybody hears the information. I want to welcome you here, welcome to you in this room, and welcome to our friends joining us online. Good evening. Since we're live streaming this event, it will automatically record on our YouTube channel so that you can go back and watch the presentations tonight or share the link with others. Mission Possible is the annual servant learning opportunity of this congregation. It started in 2005 under the ministry of our retired deacon Heidi Cryer. Mission Possible uses an accompaniment model of service where we seek to learn from those in need by being with them and listening to their stories. We seek to be part of what is already being done to serve the vulnerable in our communities. And we seek to interact with agencies that provide direct services to people in our community. We recognize that joining together is the best way to address our community's challenges. Mission Possible has been in various locations over the years, regional, national, international, local, and having a local opportunity this year allowed us to rethink how to engage with the community, and I'm so proud of the planning team that came up with the many opportunities for us to serve and learn and listen as we seek to live out our faith in Jesus and in humanity. Is there anyone in the room who took part in a tour or a project or something today? Yay, a bunch of hands. Awesome, that's great. I'm so glad that you got to do those things. Me too. I want to make sure we acknowledge and thank the planning team who worked so hard to create all of these things, including our incredible lineup of speakers each evening. They are, and I'll ask them to stand again. Carol Moser is the first one, and she's not here. She's off in Canada doing Rotary things. Hi, Carol. And then we have Susan Shipman and Marlise Vutig and Donna Carey. Please stand. Thank you. Your program tells you who the evening speakers are each night. We left one side blank if you want to take notes. There are extra pens and pencils in the back if you need one. And then I have just a few housekeeping things. Bathrooms are just down the hall on the left, and if those are full, keep going down all the way to the end, and they'll be on the right. There is childcare, so if you have little kids or know people that wanted to be there with little kids, we have a great place for them to be while we're in here. If you're signed up for dinner this week, please consider bringing a water bottle so we can cut down on waste that the plastic water bottles produce that will outlive us all. You're welcome to have your drink in this space, but please just clean up spills if you accidentally create one. And if you'd like to join us for projects or tours this week, I think there's 2 signups left, one for a tour of the library, I think, and one for a project being at B5, which would be great, so if you want to sign up for those. Also, please silence your cell phones. And then let's get into our content for tonight. Tonight, we're focusing on recovery and housing. And so I want to introduce our moderator. Tobaski Snipes is the founder and CEO of Snipes H3, which is an organization that seeks to empower individuals experiencing homelessness, especially young adults, age 18 to 24. Tobaski is also the chair of the Continuum of Care program in our area, which seeks to assist individuals and families experiencing homelessness with the goal of long-term stability. Thank you for being our moderator, Tobaski. I'll hand it over to you.
All right. All right. Y'all hear me okay? All right. So that was for me. Now give yourselves a round of applause for being here tonight. There's a lot of seats that could be filled, but y'all are the ones who chose to show up, which is what Mission Possible is all about. So the course of the evening is going to go similar to this here. We're going to introduce our speakers, and then we'll go back through, and each of our speakers will have 7 to 9 minutes to talk about their organization and what it is that they do in the community. Some of these folks I've met in different capacities, so they have a long background and history of what they do. So I'll let them talk about what they want to touch on today. So we'll go through to introduce themselves, and then we'll come back and we'll start with our guest speaker, give them the time. Then once all of them have completed talking a little bit about what they do, then we'll open the floor for questions. Everybody got that? We're good there? Mm-hmm. All right. These aren't just individuals in the community. These are staples in the community that have been doing this type of work for a long time. And now the fact that we're here today shows the progress that they've been making and the people they've inspired have been making. So our first speaker for tonight, if you want to introduce yourselves and go down, and then we'll continue on. So you can use the handheld mic right here. Watch the step. Yeah, that way it keeps them having to run around. Just for this portion.
It should be on camera.
Testing. Hi. I am Cameron Fordmeyer, and I've had the privilege of working in behavioral health, which is the term we use for both substance use and mental health in this field for over 24 years now. As of May, it was 24. Wow, I'm dating myself a little bit. But I've done a little bit of everything in that time frame, all in high intensity, high acute crisis work. So I've worked in community protection group homes, worked in psychiatric inpatient units. I've done crisis counseling and been a designated crisis responder since 2010 now. Past the direct care, I've also managed and been in leadership for the last 7 of those, and so managed crisis services for Benton and Franklin County, jail mental health for Benton County, and had the Practical Diversion Program. We started that, which is the complement to mental health court for individuals who have been found incompetent or competency has been raised at their time of committing a crime, and also developed the True Blood Program, which had designated crisis responders paired up with law enforcement. I did that for Lourdes for about 13 years, and then where I'm at right now is Greater Columbia Behavioral Health, and so I get to do the fun things like implement programs and contract with providers so that they can do the services. So if you have a problem with them, you let me know and I'll tell you who to talk to. But it's no longer me that has to talk about it. So I will point you in the right direction and give you their email and their cell phone, and you feel free to give them a call. In addition to that, I'll give it. Oh, sounds good. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Terry. I'm the pretrial diversion court coordinator for Benton and Franklin County. I was a part of the Recovery Navigator program that's new in our area. It's been going for like a year and a half now. We've been on staff. I get the privilege of going into the jails and doing drug evaluations and finding bed dates and trying to find resources for them and just kind of monitor them as they are in inpatient, as they transition into outpatient, and then we'll get into more later.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Bliss. I wear a few different hats statewide and here locally. This evening, I'm going to touch on one of my professional jobs with the Washington Alliance of Quality Recovery Residences, Walker. I've been in the recovery housing field for about 16 years and quickly approaching had the opportunity to work with about a little over 500 recovery residences across Oregon, Washington, Alaska, Idaho, and Montana. Recovery and the possibility of it is near and dear to me because I'm also a man in recovery. What that means to me, I haven't found the need to put a drink or a substance in my body since Valentine's Day back in 2010. Recovery, again, being near and dear to me, when I got out of treatment over 15 years ago, like so many people struggling in our community here today, I was wondering, where am I going to go? What's going to be the next steps? There were definitely people there for me when I needed help the most. Some sitting here at this table have been around just as long as I have. So I kind of decided to make it my mission that I was going to help people, continue to help people, and continue to give back. I had the pleasure of working for Oxford House for a great many years before the Washington Alliance of Quality Recovery Residences.
My apologies. We're just doing the initial introduction so people can know what they're looking at while everybody's going through it. Then we'll go to the
Perfect. Thank you.
My name is Annie Headley. I'm a senior outreach coordinator for Washington State with Oxford House Incorporated.
Yeah, I don't want y'all staring up and like, what is that? So, all right, so Cameron, you have the floor if you want to go to the podium. Yeah.
Off to a good start.
Cameron Ford Mayor, everybody.
Yeah, thanks. All right, so back before we tried to do this already, my name is Cameron Fordman. No. So where my position at currently is with Greater Columbia Behavioral Health. That is my 9 to 5, but like Jason and a lot of us up here, we do a little bit more than just that. And so I oversee the Recovery Navigator program and assisted outpatient treatment with Greater Columbia, and that service area is both Benton and Franklin here, but we also serve Yakima, Kittitas, Columbia, Walla Walla, Asotin, Garfield, and Whitman County up in Pullman. Go Cougs. All right, there you go, one person. The rest of you must be Huskies or something else, ducks, beavers, something, I don't know. Neither, okay. But so in addition to that, I also have my own consulting and training company. So we provide behavioral health trainings in the community and also have a contract with the city of Pasco to provide interim services for high utilizers of emergency response services. So if somebody is overutilizing the emergency system, 911, or the emergency department itself, or any fire and EMS, we have a mental health therapist, an MSW, and a peer position, and an ARNP that can come out to that person's address and find out what is the root cause, what is really going on. Do you need food insecurities? Do you have housing issues? Is there unmet behavioral health needs? What is it that you're utilizing so that we can free up those emergency services for people who are having heart attacks or people who really need it, rather than somebody who's using it for other means. In addition to that, I also spend my nights at Columbia Basin College, where I'm an adjunct instructor. So I teach in both the psychology department and the substance use department. So, and sit on a couple boards for the Recovery Coalition. Those of you that took that tour for hopefully stopped by the Recovery Center. That's been a hard gap that we've been trying to fill there. And so that will be a much needed service in the community, but we need a lot more. And on that note, we can pivot over to the housing piece of that. So a lot of the services that we do have, we have traditional outpatient services, and some of those gaps that we are filling are starting to get more into the housing element of that, and recovery housing, as well as one area that we don't have as much is more of the harm reduction element. How many of you guys have heard of harm reduction? Harm reduction gets a bad rap as enabling, but it has the same goal as what our traditional services do with abstinence and sobriety as the main goal. What we do with harm reduction is that we just try to reduce the amount of harm that's being done in that process. Not everybody is 100% ready for abstinence and sobriety, so can we focus on cutting down on the amount that you use? Can we focus on using safer means? Can we focus on maybe getting some of your unmet behavioral health or unmet physical needs met at the same time? Wound care, those type of things. So right now, we have quite a bit of housing for abstinence and sobriety based, and that's great. That is the ultimate goal. So I want to hit that home that is for all of these services that we talk about is to have people live productive and healthy lives, not abusing alcohol or drugs. But what we don't have, if we have a gap for those individuals, which you are probably seeing your current homeless population, is that they are deep into their addiction, and the choice to use or house is probably going to be at this point to use. And so you can't incarcerate your way out of that. So we can't put that person in jail and all of a sudden have them not use. We can't punish them, ridicule them. We can't shame them. We can't guilt them into doing that. So we need some more resources in our community that are going to be able to help with that person while they're deep in their addiction, so that their homeless isn't part of that. How many have you guys ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Right? We in this room most likely are at the top of that. We have self-actualization. We can have thoughts about what does it mean that I'm here? What is my purpose? What is my ultimate goal? What legacy do I want to live? When people are homeless, they are not anywhere near the pyramid. They don't even have that base level. They don't have their psychological needs met. They don't have their security needs met, right? So we talk about, well, why don't they get a job? Well, that gap in that bottom isn't filled yet. They can't think about getting a job because they don't know whether they're going to be safe tonight. They don't know whether their stuff is going to be safe or their loved ones are going to be safe or whatever that is, right? So we can't just say, well, go get some education and go to school, better yourself. They don't have that base level of that pyramid filled. So we can't skip notches up the pyramid. We can't just tell somebody, be a self-actualization, high-functioning adult, get it done and do that. Here's the service. Go to that service and get it done. There's a bunch of base layers, right? You need a foundation to do that. So some of that, what hopefully you get away from this today, is that we don't get a sour taste in our mouth about harm reduction when it comes to giving people a place to stay that is safe, that is free of judgment, that is free of being ridiculed or ashamed, that somebody can go there and they can stay there whether they are sober or not, that they don't have to pray to a certain faith, and if they don't, they can't stay there, that these are not terms that we apply to people that they can go to. And so with the Recovery Center, ideally, we also want additional services out there. And Jason will do a good job of talking about recovery housing, so will Annie, but we need some additional options for our community too. Think about it as, how many guys are comic book fans? Some? Batman, right? You guys at least know Batman, even if you're not.
Yes.
Batman's got a utility belt. He don't just go around punching and kicking. He needs a batarang. He needs a boomerang. He needs all kinds of gas. He needs something to propel. He's got a car. He's got a plane. He's got a butler. He's got all kinds of stuff, right? So what we need in this community is when we fill those gaps is we need our utility belt. We need something for each person to make sure that regardless of their background, regardless of their thinking style, regardless of their trauma history, that we have something for that person. So when we fill those gaps and you look at them, think about the addition of what we do, because we do have the mission. We do have men's and women's shelter. We do have that. But what we don't have is a place that somebody who's deep into their addiction can go, still be safe, receive services while they are there, making sure that they don't overdose, that they aren't being trafficked, that they aren't being taken advantage of, and we can treat that person while they're there so that we can start layering those other things on top of that we talked about. Getting somebody food to eat so that they know that they got a meal and they know that their basic needs are going to be met. Then we can start talking about jobs. Then we can start talking about education. Then we can start talking about reconciling with family members, starting to get their kids back, right? Or have a family to even have kids, so on and so on until we get up that pyramid. So many times we think that people should be at a certain spot and we assume that they should get there, but we don't have the ground level floor to build that base for them to do so. We talk to community members and try to make layman's terms, because we use our acronyms all the time and we use big buzzwords when we talk about these things. So at first, when anybody who has use doesn't mean they're an addict, right? Just like somebody who has depression and anxiety doesn't mean they have a depressive disorder or an anxiety disorder. So we want to normalize this to where people can get the help that they need, and we also can differentiate what is a disorder versus what is not a disorder, right? So the three ways that we can do that the easiest are the three areas of life that are impacted to say that somebody has a disorder. So just because you have a drink of alcohol, just because you smoke marijuana, just because you feel sad, just because you are depressed, none of those things make a disorder. What makes a disorder is something that severely impacts your ability to take care of your basic needs. So that is one. So if somebody is unable or not receiving the services to take care of their basic needs, that is one check to say they have a disorder, whether it's substance use or mental health. The other one is, are they able to maintain satisfying relationships? And we all know that person. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the sheriff's fault. It's their grandparents' fault. It's society's fault. It's Trump's fault. It's somebody's fault but their own, right? So if they have a problem with everybody else and they can't engage in satisfying relationships and they're on their, who knows how many marriages or what, that is another area that you would check for that disorder. The other one is their ability to provide some basic schooling or income. So if they can't maintain employment and they can't maintain education, that is another check in there for a disorder. So it's safe to say that when we're talking about this topic, that everybody who's living on the street, safe to say they have a disorder. And so what we do with that is we need services to provide for them to make sure that they come out on the other end as healthy and strong and safe. Thank you.
Awesome. Great job. Great job, Cameron. Appreciate you. I didn't know how many checks we had. I know there's a lot of them, but you checked the block on educating the folks, so good job. All right, our next speaker is Terry Miller. And I don't have a watch or my phone, trying to be disciplined, and so. You got it? All right, outstanding.
Hi, again, I'm Terry. You know, I also have a history in substance abuse. You know, I started my journey in recovery back in 2004. You know, and then in 2016, I became a substance abuse counselor. I worked at Somerset for 6 years. And then I got the honor to become the pretrial diversion court coordinator for Benton and Franklin County through the Recovery Navigator program. So I am the one that Cameron talks about, right? Like I'm the one that gets to go into the jails and get to meet people in their darkest hours and that are still going through withdrawals, that are, you know, down on those floors, detoxing, and don't probably even want to hear my voice, but are so desperate to not live like that anymore. They just want me to, you know, find the solution. And so, you know, I get to go in there and I get to do these evaluations and I get to spend a couple of hours with them getting to know their life and getting to know, you know, what their basic needs are and those things, right? And I'm the one that gets to go in there and try to talk hope into them, right? Because you got to think they're already hopeless. They already feel hopeless, right? Society's already made them feel like they ain't absolutely nothing. If you see them sitting outside of a store or in a parking lot somewhere, or, you know, they get trespassing charges and all these things, right? Because you know, they won't be able to sell a taco if somebody that looks less fortunate sitting in their driveway, right? And so I get to go face all those things and see their tears, and, you know, just so that you know, I get to try to make them feel human again. Like that's the part that I get to do, right? Like I use God as my tool to present, you know, that there is hope and there is another way to live. And so I'll do their evaluations, and then based on the information that's given, I'll get to, you know, decide if they're going to go to inpatient and intensive inpatient. You know, do they need mental health services? You know, if it's somebody that I think would benefit, you know, stabilizing the mental health a little bit more before we address the substance abuse, then, you know, we do that. But what's really important to understand is that you cannot treat one without the other. You eventually have to treat both of them together, because if you're treating substance abuse and not the mental health, it's not going to be successful, right? Or the mental health without the substance abuse is also not going to be, you know, it's not going to be doable, right? And so we need to treat both substances at the same time. And for us, a lot of that means, you know, having housing. So one of the biggest things that I hear is people lose their housing, one, because, you know, when they're in the middle of their addiction, the only thing they can think about is the substance, right? The substance becomes more important than the air that they breathe. If you gave them a choice between air and the substance, they're going to pick the substance, right? Not understanding the importance that the air is to their body, right? Because that's just the way that the substances take over a human being. So, you know, once I get them into treatment and we get them transported, and, you know, I fortunately get to work with a team of recovery navigators as well, that, you know, they get to go in and do intakes. After I do their evaluations and I get them to treatment, my recovery navigators can transport them to that treatment, right? Because who wants to go on a Greyhound bus when you smell, you haven't had a shower in a week, you have no clean clothes? So the program that I get to be a part of, we help them with basic needs. We buy them clothes, we buy them shoes, we buy them hygiene, you know, and we take them to treatment so they can start feeling like they're somebody, like they have a little bit of value, like they matter just a little bit, right? And then I get to speak to them the whole time that they're in treatment. So one of the biggest parts, and I mean this, one of the biggest parts is that when they're coming out of treatment, right, we get them into outpatient services, but they are not going to sustain in outpatient services if they do not have some sort of recovery housing to go to. Housing is primary. It is primary. If we can get them into that housing, then we can get them to the mental health institutions. We can get them over there. We'll take them to their appointments. Me personally, I'll sit down and I'll make their appointments with them. I'll get them primary care doctors. If they need their teeth done, I make them dentist appointments, because an addict is more likely to show up to an appointment than to make an appointment. right? And so it's very, very important that when we say, hey, and a lot of them, their egos are so busted down, they're not going to tell you they need a pair of shoes. Pay attention. Do they look like they need a pair of shoes? Don't ask them, hey, do you need a pair of shoes? Just be, observant. Do they look like they need some soap and water without being offensive? You can put a little care package or whatever that is that looks like, right? Some of them just need food in their belly. So we have a place that they can go for 7 days if they have the right medical, a little respite center where they can sit, for 7 days until we can get them into treatment and things like that. But the important thing is that once they get out of treatment, we have to have housing. Yes, we have Seasons housing. Yes, we have Oxford housing, but we do not have a lot of them, right? We do not. And we have to remember that funding, so our program usually, we staff them case by case, and if they don't have anybody, in which we all know that most of them do not, right? They've done burnt their bridges. The family wants nothing more to do with them, not because they don't love them. And that's the other part I get to work on with them. I get to remind them, it's not that your family don't love you. They don't love the disease. And they are not dealing with their child when they're under the influence. They're dealing with the addict that's killing their child. So let's take it back. Let's try to get them into some kind of sober housing where there's accountability. Remember, in these sober housing, they're UA'd, random UA'd, right? Behaviors are watched. You have to sit in those places, once a week. The whole entire house has to be in these meetings, right? And you have to be accountable. The thing is that sometimes there's not enough funding for these places. We can help with the deposit sometimes in a first month's rent. Then what do they do after that, right? It's really important to have those fundings, which Jason and Annie are going to be able to talk about more, how they're going to do. Because I'm going to tell you, somebody that's homeless and they have a shopping cart and they have a little spot somewhere that the police ain't bugging them all the time, I promise you that is like giving away a fortune to some. That'd be like a millionaire giving away his mansion, right? Thinking he's never going to get it back. What if I go to treatment? What if I go to inpatient treatment and then I come out and I don't have anywhere to go? I have to start all over. And even what may seem pointless to you in that cart is everything that that person has in their entire life. It's the only thing left, right? And so it's really important that when people come to churches and ask for funding for an Oxford house or a Seasons house or ask for, ways to pay these rents, just know that they're being observed. They're being UA'd, right? There's people paying attention. And these are people that usually have somebody, like some people on my crew, we'll help them fill out job applications. We'll help them get their license. We'll take them to these job interviews. We'll help them set up resumes. There's just things that we can help them do. We purchase them a phone so that they have a way to make contact for their doctor's appointments, and we have ways to make contact with them so that we don't lose contact, right? It's really important to have these necessities, these basic human necessities, right? Nobody has house phones anymore. We're good? Okay. Nobody has house phones really anymore. Everybody has a cell phone, right? And you got to understand, these guys are on Wi-Fi services. And everywhere they go where there's active Wi-Fi, you got to remember they're going to get a trespass and they end up back in jail. So just remember that the next time that, you guys see somebody out there, just speak hope to them. I'm not saying give out of your pockets and give them money and all that stuff. I'm saying speak hope. When I see them, I hand them my card. Yep. And I say, I won't be a part of the problem, but I'll help you with the solution. That's it. Thank you.
Great job. Oh, great job. I'm pretty sure that tagline is on y'all's paper somewhere, all right? About the mission is being part of the solution. How many of y'all's heads is spinning right now with all the ideas on how you can help and give back to the community? Yeah, I've been doing this for a while, and mine's doing the same thing. So next up, we have Jason Bliss.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. When I was chatting with Tabowski a little bit earlier today, I have the pleasure of doing speaking engagements all across the country, and I was trying to think, how am I going to condense this down to 9 minutes? First, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an overview exactly what recovery housing is. According to SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, They define recovery housing as safe, healthy, family-like, substance-free living environments that support individuals in recovery from addiction. These residents will vary in structure and are centered around peer support, connection to services that promote long-term recovery. When I first started working in the recovery housing field right about 15 years ago, here in Tri-Cities, we had a total of 16 recovery residences here in Tri-Cities. Today, a lot of people sitting in the room today would be shocked to know that we have over 65 recovery residences spread over Pasco, Richland, and Kennewick even. These homes house individuals that are in recovery from substance abuse, co-occurring disorders. There's houses out there for men, for women, women with children, men with children. We have some providers in the community that are providing recovery housing for families that are in recovery. And we even have one newer provider here in the Tri-Cities who's trying a co-ed model. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I'm sure as you can all think of, the co-ed model usually doesn't work out all too well, but they're giving it another try. I say all of this because even with the 60 plus houses that we have here in the Tri-Cities area, we have less than a 1% vacancy rate. We have more recovery residences per capita in Benton and Franklin County than anywhere else in Washington State. I guess there's two ways that you can look at that. One way, it's something to be very proud of, that we have recovery residences here, that we're trying to do something and help the members of our community that are homeless. But then there's the flip side of that as well. We have such a problem here in our local area with drugs and alcohol that we need that much housing. With our 1% vacancy rate that we currently have here, I'm going to back up a little bit. There's 4 levels of recovery homes across Washington State. The first is a peer model, which is primarily all of our Oxford houses that we have here. In that model, the house is run on a democratic basis by all of the peers that live in the house. Oxford House, being around since 1976, has a very sound model in place through this democratic process for the individuals to live there and the individuals to continue to grow. There's also what we have here, which are monitored homes, formerly known as Level 2. Those homes have some oversight, usually in the form of a house manager or operator that checks in on those houses daily. Next, we have a supervised home. In the supervised home is where you're going to start to see some programming and maybe a little bit of clinical services. Last but not least, we have the Level C of homes. Those are strictly of a clinical basis. I will say currently, here in Tri-Cities, we have the first 3 levels that I spoke of. We have the peer homes that Oxford Houses are running. We have the Walker accredited homes that are monitored. We also have the supervised homes here. With that being said, there is such a need at all levels, all the way across the board. On my Walker side of business, where I inspect, accredit, and provide technical assistance to new recovery residence operators, we have 17 independent operators operating here in the Tri-Cities. Again, a family housing model. We have housing just for women. We have housing just for men. Then, of course, we have the Oxford houses that are here, been doing very, very well and thriving. The importance of all of the different levels is because recovery housing isn't a one-size-fits-all. For some individuals who may have a little bit of understanding as to what it takes for recovery to get back on their feet, sometimes Oxford House is a great fit for them. Then you have individuals that are looking for recovery housing that need a whole lot more help, such as perhaps a whole lot more mental health help. Maybe they need a lot more substance abuse help. They need what's called a higher level of care. And the level 2, level 3, level 4, the PMSC homes that I spoke of, those are able to provide those higher level of care for individuals here in the community. When individuals move into any of the Walker accredited homes, we do what is called a recovery capital assessment. Every individual, when they enter into recovery, has both positive and negative recovery capital. Some of that positive recovery capital may be they've got a good support system. They're going to drug and alcohol counseling. They're going to mental health services. Or perhaps they might even have a job. Then we assess the negative recovery capital. That may be, maybe they haven't been in to see a dentist in the better part of 10 years. Maybe they don't have any mental health insurance. Maybe they haven't been in to see a doctor in over 10 years. Maybe they still have a misdemeanor warrant out for their arrest that they haven't dealt with. Maybe they still have court fines that are not paid. The whole idea behind this recovery capital assessment is to truly measure where that individual is the day that they move in, then sit down, make a plan with them, engage with them, set meaningful goals to help them overcome all of that negative recovery capital. I feel that if an individual just moves into a recovery residence and they don't have the opportunity to sit down and truly identify what all of those things were that were holding them back, what all those things were that led up to the substance use and ultimately them getting into a recovery home, there's a much lower chance that they're going to stay clean and sober. If we're able to help them identify and overcome all of those barriers that were holding them back, they have a much, much better chance at recovery. I know I'm getting close on time. I could talk forever, but I'm going to leave you with this one statistic. If an individual goes to rehab, recovery today, they might start outpatient, but if they do not have somewhere safe, such as a recovery residence, or they return to the same place they were living before they went to recovery, less than 10% of them will remain clean and sober. If an individual has the opportunity to move into a recovery residence and stay there for 15 months, studies show that 87% of them were clean and sober at the 5-year mark. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Wow. Great job, Jason. Many of y'all don't know this, and I don't even think Jason knows this, but since I started doing my work, he's kind of been like my mentor. So appreciate you, man. Great job. All right, next up we have Miss Annie Headley.
All right, can you hear me? So my name is Annie Headley. I am a woman in long-term recovery. What that means to me is I haven't given myself an excuse to put any drugs or alcohol in my body since April 23rd of 2015. I am also a senior outreach coordinator for Oxford House Incorporated here in Washington State. A little bit of the area, actually, Jason trained me and taught me everything I know. He was my outreach worker, and he made it look so amazing that I had to do it. So it's an honor to come in after him and work with him. So Oxford House is a self-run, self-supporting, clean and sober recovery home. We have the most here in Washington State. We, at the end of the month, will have 377 in the state here, and we have 32 here in the Tri-Cities area. We actually are opening up another Women and Children's on the 1st of the month in Richland. That's not very much. Between our houses and Walker houses, we just do a little dent, like Jason was saying. We are celebrating our 50th year. Oxford House was founded in 1975. We came here to Washington State in 1990. If you like little facts, if you look up the city of Edmonds versus Oxford House, you'll find a little thing about we went all the way to the Supreme Court, and we are considered a single family with disabilities, so therefore it is illegal to discriminate against us. And we can have more than 5 unrelated people living in a house because we deem what a family is. With that, we are the first state that started women's houses and women and children's houses. Some things we've been doing a lot is men and children. A lot of men are getting their children back, so we are doing things like that to house them. My service area that I work with deeply is 58 houses. So I have Kittitas County all the way to Asotin. And then I supervise Vancouver, Longview, Kelso, Long Beach, and Aberdeen. So a really pretty big area. I love what I do. But we need you all. We need more houses. Oxford House doesn't own any houses. We rent them. So part of my job is to speak to people and really get like-minded people that want to help and that want to rent their houses to us. We also need furniture, things like that, because we are self-run, self-supporting. So we do rely heavily on the community to help people. We have different levels of support. Each house is autonomous according to our model. It's a democratic basis. So they follow the Oxford models, traditions. How we figure out how much everybody pays is whatever the landlord wants to charge us in rent. We take that with all of the bills, plus like cleaning supplies, laundry detergent, things like that. We add that all together, and then we split it amongst the people that are there. So if there's less people there, they have to pay a little bit more. So it's really important for them to then take ownership in their homes, do their interviews, answer the phone. A lot of people have cell phones, so we do have an amazing vacancy site. It's www.oxfordvacancies.com. You just put in what state, what county, what gender of house. You can also apply online there. So what that does is it's updated every week on a Monday. There's one person in the house whose cell phone is attached to that. So when somebody applies, it'll ping their cell phone, and then that also tells them to go to their house email and print off the application. So the vacancies, like I said, get updated, and we do interviews weekly. Each house kind of does it all on their own. Let's see, that's pretty much the basis of it. You know, you need to be in recovery. That's the only requirement for entering. You need to enter clean and sober, remain clean and sober. You have weekly house meetings. You decide what your path to recovery is, because there's multiple paths that need to be celebrated. We work really well with partnering. Like Jason was saying, we need more level 1 through 4 houses here. We work really, really well because sometimes somebody might come into an Oxford house because they've heard of us before, but maybe they need a little bit more care that we can't provide. So we might refer them over to Jason and get them in there, or there might be somebody that has gone to Jason's and they don't really want that wraparound service. Or we've had a lot of people come from Seasons houses that have graduated and they're ready to come be with us. So it's a really good partnership that we can hand off to each other and just really help, because like recovery, it's, you know, it's not one size fit all, and that's the same thing with our housing. And I think that's all I got. Thank you.
And that was great. I don't know if I mentioned before, I saw a couple of y'all writing questions down because it's hard to remember those when it gets back to the end. So this is the portion where we'll do the Q&A, and they'll just pass the microphone around to the ones who can best answer that question. And Pastor Kirsten will go around with all of you that might have a question. All right. And remember that no question is a dumb question, right? We're all here to learn. Everybody picked up different parts of this, so.
I'm so impressed with what you said, Jason, about having a long-term recovery. Our son in 2001 went from a straight-A student to a meth addict. He went to Olalla for 4 weeks and went to a halfway house. He had more drugs available there in Tacoma than we were aware of. And I look back And we're both state troopers. I feel like we're so naive about the recovery program. I just find this so beautiful that there's people out there now that can help these kids. Because, and like Cameron said, they blame everyone. It was our fault. We didn't go to a baseball game. It's just, I look back and some of it's silly, but I don't understand how his mind worked. I just think you people are amazing, and thank you so much.
I don't think I need a mic. Oh, pardon me. Okay, people online. All right. Well, I was just curious. I too had a child that went through drug problems and has finally made it through to recovery. And fortunately for him, he asked for help. We gave it and took him into our home for a couple of years, which got him in a different environment, out of the environment he was in. But my question is, with regard to the recovery houses that you have, how do you acquire them? Are they homes, or maybe they're apartment complexes? I don't know, but are they residences that were given to an organization for that particular purpose, or is it better to try to build something new, and how one might do that?
It's coming on. They're working now. They do it.
There we go. Great question. So all of the Oxford houses that are across Washington State and all across our country, each and every one of those homes are leased. They're all leased in rental homes. They start out at for 2 years that they sign a lease for, and then hopefully they're able to stay there for long term. The Walker homes, there is a wide variety of them. Some of them are nonprofit organizations that have homes within their inventory, within their organization, that they might either let an operator use for the purpose of a recovery residence. Some of them they rent, some of them they lease. The good thing here in Washington State, and I'll have to say about our governor, all politics aside, regardless of what your stance is, the man did phenomenal things this year for the recovery community as a whole. In about 2 months, Walker will be receiving, Walker being short for the Washington Alliance of Quality Recovery Residences, will be receiving a touch over $16 million that we will be able to pass out statewide for rapid acquisition to be able to acquire new recovery residences. Those are for independent operators that are out there. Oxford House investors will also have the opportunity to tap into some of that for more funding for them as well. So the next 2 years, at least as far as the financing of side of things goes, for individuals to be able to have their rent covered, for individuals to be able to rapidly acquire homes, or for individuals to be able to go out and find additional homes that are for lease. The opportunities are very, very good for the next 2 years.
Yeah, great question. So, like, keeping that in mind, this portion is about the substance abuse in the housing. So y'all are doing a great job at staying on task. The rest, if you want to know about the food and all that, you have to keep coming back. So, yeah.
Will you be able to access any of that money for, as you say, the harm reduction housings, or how do you foresee harm reduction housing coming in into play here.
There we go. That is going to be a touchy topic because of, like I said, the stigma that is attached to that you are potentially enabling somebody or you're not putting your emphasis on abstinence and sobriety when, that's why I said the ultimate goal of that is abstinence and sobriety. So to Jason's point, that will probably go to more Wexford or Oxford homes, but I think we will have to get creative and follow a similar model that the Recovery Coalition followed in getting like a city or a county to help back that and put a model together that has some security, that has services that are there available, because you can't just put up a barndominium or something and fill it with cots and say it's harm reduction. There has to be some programming attached to that you have providers in that. So they probably won't be able to tap into that funding, but in order to do that, you have to do it right so that you get anybody who is a not in my backyard type of person to know that this is working and this is actually structured and it provides some value, that we have clinicians in there, we have peers in there, we have individuals who in the floors have medical services or at least a route to use those medical services. So, and it would probably be layered too, where you had somebody who could come in and, for example, do a cot type thing with supervision, but then have small affordable housing attached to that you could transition to, stuff like that. So that is a dream and a hope, and that will be a gap that we pursue and fill, but to my knowledge, there isn't any specific for that.
Okay, second part of that, is there a model somewhere? Does Oregon have a model? We talked about Houston, is there a model somewhere of that Washington can look at?
There is currently. Catholic Family Charities over in Pasco, here in a local community, has Schuyler Bishop Commons that was completed, time flies, I want to say 1.5 years, 2 years ago. That one is set up as a harm reduction model. All studio and 1-bedroom apartments. Very, very beautiful place over in Pasco. The one funding source that's out there, and I believe still remains available, is through the Washington State Department of Commerce, and it's called Apple Health and Homes. They had quite a few million available in grant dollars to set up harm reduction. And just for, I guess, just for a point of clarity, though Annie and I both work in abstinence-based recovery models, there 100% is a need for the harm reduction homes. We need to welcome all recovery homes, all walks of recovery, whatever it's going to take to be able to get somebody back clean and sober.
Those are great questions. Keep them coming. So back to your point, and Cameron touched on it. So an update is that we are working on all different levels of the recovery, being the ones that are on the street that don't have the discipline yet to stay in one of our homes. Y'all see out here, this is called Conestoga huts. And Carol will talk about that later, but that's basically for the folks that are still using, where the drugs has captured their mind, right? But they still have a safe place to sleep at night, right? Which is important for everybody. And when you get a good night's sleep, you can start making better decisions the next day. So we have the huts. Now we're just looking for places to be able to accommodate those, as well as the recovery homes. I think we're turning the old hospital, right, into a recovery center. And that's going to be mental health and drug reduction, right, and all of that. So Tri-Cities have a great plan in place. Keep going.
So you've talked about funding quite a bit. Do you get any federal funding, and do nonprofits support you? And the other side of the question is funding your biggest obstacle, or what's your biggest obstacle to helping more people?
Yeah, so I'm gonna take the first part of your question first when it comes to funding. Both Cameron and I have the pleasure of serving on the Benton Franklin Recovery Coalition, and have for some years. The recovery center that we're getting here has been in the process, believe it or not, for about 6.5 years. We, to date, have been able to come up with a little over $42 million to be able to bring that project together. And that funding has been a very, very braided funding approach. Some of it has been local dollars, state dollars, 0.1% tax dollars, federal direct spending, federal appropriations, state general funds, opioid abatement dollars, ARPA funds. It's been a very, very braided funding approach to being able to get that together. As I touched on, funding is looking very, very good over the next 2 years. You asked what the biggest barrier is to being able to open these type of houses. I would have to say it's two things here in the state of Washington. One, what our economy is like, what home prices are like, and what that trickles down to in what rent prices are like. You've got to remember that irregardless, somebody still has to make that mortgage payment. Somebody still has to make that rental payment. So if you look at the Oxford House model, Oxford House is pretty much self-sufficient and self-supporting, meaning the individuals in that house have to be able to pay their own rent. When I first got into recovery a little over 15 years ago, in order for me to stay in a recovery residence, a shared room with another man, ran me $300 per month. Just over the last 15 years here in Washington, that has doubled to houses that are now being opened are a minimum of $600 per person in a shared bed just to be able to stay in there. The other obstacle that I would say that we're up against here is a term called NIMBY, which stands for Not in My Backyard. Many individuals, when I first got into this, many individuals may have known somebody who suffered from drug or alcohol addiction. They might have a distant friend, but today it's totally different. If all of us sitting here in this room did not have somebody within our own family that addiction had touched, I can guarantee all of us sitting here at least know somebody. But it's on all of us to get out and continue to educate those in our local community. A lot of the NIMBYism is based on fear because people don't have an understanding of what recovery can look like. People think, oh, people in recovery are going to move in, home values are going to automatically go down, we're going to have nothing but high crime rate, we're going to have nothing but people using drugs in the house. And all of those statements are based on fear. When in reality, the one thing that I can guarantee about a recovery residence, if accredited or an Oxford House, is probably going to be the only home on that block that I can guarantee that people aren't going to be drinking or using drugs or alcohol.
Yeah.
So it's on all of us to continue to educate and share the need and the good things that are happening in the community.
Is it ready? I wanted to ask Terry a question specifically. You said that you meet the clients that you'll work with they're usually in jail, and then you work with them, evaluate to get them moved into the appropriate place. How long do you work with those clients, those individual clients, before you would have to move on?
So in the program that I'm doing right now, they sign into a pretrial diversion, a 1-year pretrial diversion. And so those people need to maintain contact with me for that year, right? So even though that program is a year long. I have a lot of them that have successfully completed the program sooner than a year. So I basically base it off of the ASAM and the 6 dimensions, like do they have a way to support themselves? You know, do they have a recovery housing or stable, you know, living environment? You know, do they have a way to pay for their own bills and take care of themselves? You know, is their medical, you know, efficient? You know, like what are the things that they're doing? If they can show me that they can support themselves in their community and that they have stability and whatever, then, you know, I'll ask the prosecutor to go ahead and dismiss their charges, and then, you know, and then we get to graduate them. As of right now, knock on wood and thanks to the Lord, right? Out of the 27 successful completions that we've had in this program in the last year and a half, we have not had one reoffend yet. So, yeah. And that big part is because of the recovery housing. So when Jason says that we need more recovery housing, he is not even playing, not even a little bit, right? And then a lot of them, they still call me. Even though they've completed this program, they still call me and they're like, hey, Terry, how's it going? Like, you know, like we're buds now, right? And it's okay, right? Because that's what my job is about. It's about connecting with other people, and it's about letting them know that, you know, even if they slip back or anything happens, they can call me, and to make them feel comfortable to not feel that shame in doing that.
Terry has a unique position too that no other Recovery Navigator program has. And sorry, it's me talking there. I saw you looking. So the Recovery Navigator programs are in every county across the state, but our programs here have a diversion coordinator. So Terry's position is unique, where she can go into the jail and deal with the criminal and diversion element of that. But there is no length of time for somebody to maintain services. It's based on that person's need. So if that person needs additional care past their criminal charges or they've been dismissed, there is no length of time for that. As long as the Recovery Navigator program is in existence, that person can still receive outpatient services, assistance with basic needs, whatever that may be. As long as there's a need there, they can serve them.
Are y'all familiar, understand what you mean by diversion? That means that the community that's helping folks in recovery and our legal system is actually working together to help these folks in need. So that's what diversion is all about. In order for them to get out, you know, shorten their time, they are working with people that are going to pour into them to help become positive contributors to society.
My question is for the Oxford House people. How, with so many houses and just the few of you managing them, how do you manage oversight in those homes to make sure that things are happening the way they're supposed to be? And what do you do if you find out they're not?
So we'd have different levels of support. So the houses are autonomous according to the model. Each house has basic rules. We have traditions, manuals, and things like that when the house is set up. So if I have a new house, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take people that are successful in the other houses, and I'm going to bring them into the new house. So they're going to be our core group of people. So we have people that have been having successful house move in to help start the other. Also, each house is part of a chapter. So there's another level of support. So just like in the houses, you're elected a president, a secretary, a comptroller. So each position kind of teaches you life skills. So each position is responsible. On the chapter level, we also have people from the houses that have voted in other people by their peers that have chapter officer positions. We have housing service committees, you know, so we have different levels of support from the chapter level. Like the chapter officers help with maybe the 10 houses they have. And then from there, we have the state. So we have 37 chapters. And then you have an outreach worker like myself. We also have state coordinators, reentry coordinators, regional managers. So we have all different levels of support. So a lot of times, if the house can't figure it out, they have somebody else that they can call. If that person can't figure it out, they they have all the levels of support. We also rely on the community. Sometimes the community might hear some things a little bit faster than we might. We also have audits like for finances and stuff. So every month there's an audit performed on the books that the house does. So anything dealing with money is 2 to 3 people, right? Because we have to have accountability. So there's lots of things ingrained into the model and level of supports that help us.
As we continue on, think about like how we can assist in what's going on. Jason brought up a good point about our governor being able to help out with funding for the next 2 years, but guess what happens in 2 years? We might have somebody else who's not as supportive. So this is where, regardless of what happens anywhere else, nobody cares about our community more than we do. So if you know somebody that has a house, if you have a house, if you have an open bedroom, right? This is an opportunity for you to give back and help somebody that's, further along in their recovery. And obviously, they're not going to send anybody that's not going to be a good fit. But we have to think about how we can give back to our community. Because no matter what happens outside, if we don't have a place for these to go, they're going to end up in your backyard, whether you want them next door or not. So.
I want to say thank you to you all. Definitely good to have you guys here and to hear the wonderful things you guys are doing in our community. My first question is just a quick one. Jason or Annie, either of you could speak to it. Typically, those that come into Oxford Housing, what is their length of stay?
So all of us have regardless of it, a Walker accredited provider, regardless of it's an Oxford house, all of us shoot for that magic number of 15 months. A lot of great scholars, DePaul University, Jason Leonard, Dr. David Best of Leeds Trinity University. Many great scholars have done a lot of research on Oxford House and various different recovery models. Again, for those individuals that choose to stay around for that 15 months, 87% of them will remain clean and sober after 5 years. The downside to that number drops off very, very quickly. Don't get me wrong, we try to wrap our arms around each and every individual that moves into the recovery residence, provide them with the love, with the support, with the resources they need. Don't get me wrong, and I'm sure the clinicians that are sitting up here with me, some individuals move into a recovery residence, they say, hey, you know what, I got a boyfriend, I got a girlfriend, I got myself a little job, I graduated from IOP, life's going great, there is no more than I need. Before you know it, the U-Haul's backing up, they're going to move in with their significant other, and then, oh, I forgot I didn't have a driver's license. They get pulled over, the car gets impounded, they lose the apartment, right back to jail, and the revolving door stays open, if you will. We try to share the reality of that with each and every person that moves in when it comes to that recovery capital assessment that I was talking about, to try and help them identify that. Don't get me wrong, there's going to be some individuals that are going to come in with that negative recovery capital. We're going to be able to help them get past that, maybe in a year's time. Have I seen some individuals that have been successful only living in a house for 10 months, a year? Yes, absolutely I have. But that 15 months is what we strive for. Yeah.
Appreciate it. My second question, I'm sorry, but Terry, with your expertise, I'm a teacher myself, and I see students day in and day out that probably need help before they get to jail. How, using your expertise, would you think we could help best meet the needs of those students to help catch them before they get to that point?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I'm just going to say this. I'm going to say that addiction is usually a family disease, right? And so sometimes, even for the most education that you can provide to someone is not enough, right? So for me, example, you know, I tell my grandchildren that I'm raising right now, hey, you know, your mom's an addict, your dad's an addict, your grandma, your great-grandma, you know, on and on and on, right? So the best way for you to guarantee to never become an addict is to never try anything, right? And we all know that sometimes it starts with cigarettes. And then as you're doing your evaluations, you hear that usually in middle school or high school, they try alcohol or marijuana, right? And then from there, it just, you know, it's never enough. And, you know, and then the disease is woken and off they go. So really early intervention is, and sometimes just letting them see how the addiction plays out, sometimes like reminding them, like, hey, do you see how it turned out for mom or how it turned out for so-and-so? You know, this is how it could turn out for you too, you know, and then just, you know, letting them hear. And I think going around other recovering addicts, and I think that's what Oxford House was, right? Like when I got clean back in 2004, I went into an Oxford House. Back then you got 2 years in the house. It was a grow program. I stayed there for 2 years. I stayed clean for 9 years, right? And then, you know, I relapsed for 3 years, and then I went back to Oxford again. And again, it was that stability and that accountability and all that stuff, you know, and by the grace of God, you know, I'm coming up on 9 years again, right? But so I think that statistic rate for what Jason talked about is very effective, you know, staying there that 15 months, you know, 2 years, and then moving on. And I think that having your children, and you know, grow up in those homes is a big thing. But again, I think that intervention, maybe Jason has something better to say on that, but for me, on my professional saying, you know, you can say a lot, but.
One thing I'll add, the opposite of addiction is connection. If you see individuals that are struggling, whether it's young adolescent students that you're working with in the community, whether it's adults, the common denominator in all of that is lack of connection. Lack of connection to positive people, lack of connection to resources. Sometimes it's lack of connection to a parent's love, and the children are simply reaching out. Sometimes it's not bad at all. When I was in my addiction, it had nothing to do with the way that I was raised. I had two very loving parents. I went to church every Wednesday. I went to church every Sunday. I was a farm kid. I knew what hard work was, but for me, it was growing up in a very small town community that I had to get away from. Unfortunately for me, when I got away, one of the first things that I ran into was a plate of cocaine at somebody's house. And it all went downhill and spiraled downhill. For me, it was the lack of connection, not knowing where to go, not knowing what to do, so I chose to continue to self-medicate. If I had the connections, if I had the resources, had they been afforded to me and available to me sooner, I'd probably be sitting here with a lot more years of recovery than I have today.
One of the things that then they touched it on the head, like some actual things that you can do, right? Is open communication with those that, firstly, are children, and then those you think that might have a problem. Can't be afraid of the conversation, right? And then you have to hold them accountable, right? Accountability is huge. Most times when you start holding people accountable, you realize that that's what they're craving. If you hold them accountable, that means you care. That means you have confidence that they can accomplish that. And somebody that has confidence, they can't be, in a particular moment, they can't be drugged down by something they don't want to be drugged down in, right? And the other part of something you can actually do is get them involved, like you said, connection. Take them to these soup kitchens, right? Let them see how other people live once you get started. And not only are they going to see that, they're going to have that connection. They're going to walk away from that feeling like they just saved the world, right? And that's something that you can't be taught in school. So.
First of all, thank you, as was already said, for doing a lot of great things and helping people. I have two sort of related questions. One is, what is the gap between the need and what you're able to fulfill. And sort of related to that, we've heard in some cases about siloing between the different resources that are available. What is the extent that that is the problem? So those two questions.
Yeah, so we kick around fancy terms all the time. And so one of the things that you can look up is the sequential intercept model. And so that's a fancy term for saying that from a point A from somebody from 0, which is in the community, so law enforcement, fire, EMS, all the way to 5 and 6, which is released from prison or from corrections. But everywhere in between there is another intercept point that you can intervene for somebody. Right? And so when we take a look at our community, we have a few gaps in that. We have 10 law enforcement agencies counting the airport, so we have quite a bit of that. We have fire and EMS, but we don't have a lot of co-responders. And by that, I mean mental health and substance abuse experts that are embedded in with law enforcement, because law enforcement has to do the community social worker thing, and sometimes their only alternative for that is jail, which, as we talked about, isn't that. So if we had people embedded in those or could respond in tandem, maybe not in the same police car or in the same one, we would have an alternative to that. So it didn't come with a big stick and you're talking to an officer, you could talk to somebody who specializes in that. So that's one of those areas that we have a gap in there. The other one is what we've been talking about is housing, especially housing first models, right? So we have another gap in that we don't. We are feeling a huge gap because before the Recovery Center opened, we had no social detox, so it used to be called like a drunk take detox. We didn't have that. We don't have any medical detox, so if you're needing to withdraw medically from benzodiazepines, which you can die from, so anxiety medication, alcohol, you can die from that. We don't have a medical detox where a medical professional can help taper you down off of that so your withdrawal symptoms don't kill you. We are filling that gap with the Recovery Center, but we don't have those services for children. So we don't have a crisis triage facility for kids. We don't have a psychiatric inpatient unit for kids. We have no detox services at all for our youth. So that's another gap that we have as youth services. So we are filling the adult one, but we will have youth services in that. And the other one would be a specialized house or services specifically. We do have DOC, Department of Corrections, but there's a lot of individuals who are coming out of prisons and jails that they have been institutionalized. They have no concept of trying to get to places on time because somebody has woke them up for years telling them when to eat, when to go to the yard, when to sleep, and now they're released and they have to navigate the system, the bus routes, they have to go to services. So specialized services for people who have been incarcerated too is another gap that we would have. And I'll let Jason or anybody else talk about some of those other gaps too.
I think Cameron did a pretty good job of touching on the gaps. On the plus side of it, I'm sure some of you had the opportunity to be able to go on the tour of the new Recovery Center today, but a lot of great things are going to be happening there to help fill some of those gaps in our community. From crisis stabilization, detox, a sobering center where individuals will be able to walk into and be provided some supports to be able to get sober for the first 23 hours, to eventually some inpatient treatment, and ultimately to continue that full continuum, we will have a residential housing component that is going to be going inside of the Recovery Center as well. So even though there are a lot of gaps currently in our system in what I like to call the continuum of care here in the Tri-Cities, they have been identified, and come March or April next year, a lot of those gaps will be filled.
How about number gaps?
I'm sorry?
The number gap, capacity versus need.
Absolutely, and that was the biggest thing, one of the biggest things that I was trying to touch on. Even with the 65 recovery residences that we currently have here in Tri-Cities, each and every month we hover somewhere around a 1 to 2% vacancy rate. If somebody, if a provider or Oxford House was able to find affordable homes here in the community and open up 10 new homes, I'm confident that those homes would all be full within the first 45 days. That is a staggering truth of how many more recovery beds are needed here in Tri-Cities. The need is definitely, the demand is definitely far outpacing the need.
So we're coming up on 8 o'clock, so we'll field a couple more questions. Just for y'all to know that we are streaming live on Facebook at the Lord of Life Kennewick Facebook page. If you have questions and don't really know how to reach the individuals that you want to talk to or know who it is you need to talk to, put your questions on the Facebook page. Somebody will answer, okay?
If someone has a home that they'd like to consider for Oxford House, does that have to be cleared by the not in my backyard people?
Absolutely not.
No. So Annie currently works for Oxford House. She will get you one of her cards before she leaves here today. So part of the duties of the outreach representative, they will meet with you, see if they can negotiate a fair price that's good for you and that can help the individuals in recovery. And from there, they 100% take that on. They will have an open house. If NIMBY issues come up, they have the training, the ability to be able to sit down with individuals to explain what the model is, how the model works, and if they have any questions or concerns, or if anything ever comes up, Annie is here for them, to meet with them and to see to it that things go well. For a lot of individuals, they think, oh, a recovery residence is going to come into town. Somebody's going to open it up. We're never going to see from them again. We're never going to hear from them. And if problems arise, we'll have nobody that we can reach out to. Oxford House takes great pride in helping to break down that NIMBYism. So all of the concerns that come up from the neighbors, they really work hard to break down all of those barriers. You know, in my years that I've been doing this, I've seen some neighbors just absolutely irate that a recovery residence is being opened up next door. 2 years later, sometimes it even don't take that long, when they see the guys are out there helping them shovel when there's snow on the ground, helping them cut grass. The neighbors are actually inviting the members from the recovery residence over to barbecues. They're actually inviting the residents over, baking them cookies. It's just amazing what can happen when people are educated and have a firm understanding of what recovery housing really is.
One more question.
I think it's
All right.
Do they, people who want to go and get into Oxford House, is it like a regular application process? Do they have to have been clean for a certain amount of time or anything like that?
So we have a vacancy site. So we could do that electronically. They can also call the houses. If they're incarcerated, we do have applications. So any of the counselors can do that. We also have peer navigators that go into the jail that have our applications, so they try to help us. So there's multiple different ways. There's calling me as well. I get a lot of calls. But we can do it electronically, in person, anything like that. The biggest thing is getting them the interview for the house, because they only do interviews once a week. That's when everybody can get together. It's an 80% approval in order to get in. We do have some houses in the area that will do like emergency couching situations. And like I said, you would enter clean and sober, remain clean and sober. Some people interview with us and they're maybe not ready, but they have an appointment to go to detox. So we'll accept them, they go to detox, and then we go and pick them up. So there's lots of different ways. There will be people that test positive for THC. That takes a lot of time to get out of the system. So when they're in their interview, they can just say, hey, I might be positive for THC. That's something we can work with. So every case is a little bit different. And also, you can live in Oxford House for as long as you want. You can't drink or use. You need to pay your share and not be disruptive. So.
That's awesome. A round of applause for our panel.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing and for the conversation. Thank you, Chbosky, for leading us, for moderating. I forgot to say at the beginning, Annie was here in place of George Block, who's on your program. And then Jody Gerritsen wasn't able to be here, and same with Marlando and Stephanie Sparks. So just if you were wondering about that. But thank you so much for this conversation. I think I'm going to close like how we did last night. So first, let's just take a moment of silence just to try to like soak it in and just sit in what has just happened. And then I have another poem to close us tonight. This is also by Joe Davis, like last night. I kind of was recalling what we heard last night from Dr. Person and from Gavin. Is kind of what it made me think of. Dr. Person kept going back to thinking about what are the things that we're not asking about what's happening in this situation. Like this person's homeless, and we might say, they're not trying hard enough to get a job or whatever. That was kind of thrown out tonight. But like, what are the things that we are not seeing that are also part of that situation? Anyway, that's what made me think about, or that connected me to this. So it's called Good Neighbor, a reminder to be a good neighbor. If everyone is our neighbor and the world is our neighborhood, then what kind of behavior does God say makes a neighbor good? If I see a new neighbor, would I stop and stare? Make fun of their clothes or laugh at their hair? Or would I ask them their name and how they like to be greeted so I can treat them the way that they like to be treated? Would I listen to their stories, their songs, their jokes? Would I share with them my fears, my dreams, my hopes? If we have different cultures or speak different languages, would I want to learn more or think that they're dangerous? And how can I make the space feel safe for them? Are there things that need to be created or changed for them? Are they asked to stand when they need a chair? Do they need a ramp when we only have stairs? If I have what they need, will I happily share? What ways can I show that I actually care? Being a good neighbor isn't about saving others or behaving in ways the laws say we should, but discovering how God's grace already makes us good and how God's love turns beloved neighbors into beloved neighborhoods. Thank you for being here tonight.